Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and I'm going to be interviewing Micah Hanks, the host of the Gradian Report, which, if y'all have never been to his show, I really recommend that you do attend it. I think you'll really enjoy it. And he's also the author of his very own book, Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. And this is going to be about his second or third time on my show. He's a very interesting guest, and that's partly why I'm sure he's a very interesting host also. I don't often get to catch many shows, but I try to catch what I can. And I need to check into his. I mean, I have heard his archives before, and he did a really great job, I thought. So, you know, like I said, I really would recommend him. But we're going to talk today about a couple of conferences that he's got coming up. One of them in June in Sacramento, and that's going to be the 2012 UFO Paranormal Summit being put on by Strange Light Publishings. And it's going to be June 16th to the 17th in Sacramento, California. If y'all scroll down past Micah's and Stanton Friedman's, all the show descriptions for the upcoming shows, just below that, you'll see a big banner that has all the upcoming guests. Actually, the one with Stanton Friedman's not supposed to be there. Something's come up and he's not going to be able to attend. Stanton will still be at my show this coming Tuesday, nonetheless, but we're going to discuss something else other than the, upcoming UFO conference in Sacramento, because he's not going to be able to attend that one after all. But if y'all scroll down there and click on it, it'll take you right to the site where you can get ticket information and all the other information you'd like to know. You'll get to see the other speakers. And some of these speakers have agreed to come on my show and tell us what they're going to be doing at the show. And there's also another symposium that Micah Hanks is a part of that he's going to be talking about, that's going to be coming up in October. And I need to actually go to his webpage and look at that. And can you hold on just 1 minute? Okay. I hope that fixes it. Somebody has informed me that they can't hear. And that's odd, because everything is registering that it's working. And I wonder what happened to Sandy. I bet May Reed had probably come in just after the show started. But getting back to the business at hand, going to Micah's site, I'll come up with the, I know he had it on here. Oh, yeah, it was up at the top. In October, he's going to have the Paradigm Symposium, October 18th to the 21st. And we're going to talk a little bit about that symposium as well. And I'm going to give you the link to it so y'all can go see who all the speakers are and get an idea about ticket information and such. Let me paste that link, and I'll contact Micah real quick, and I'll bring him on. Just want to remind everybody, share this show's link with your friends. Tell them it's Tuesday nights at 8, Saturdays at 1. Tell them we have a chat room. If you like the show, which I'm sure you do, you keep coming, tell them you like it, and we'll get some people in this chat room with you to talk and discuss this while the show's live, as well as me putting out the notices. Let me go ahead and get Micah with us real quick, like. Hello, Micah. Hello, Micah.
Hey, Royce, how are you?
I'm doing just great. That was quite a little intro you had there.
Oh, well, unfortunately, I didn't hear you at first. You may have introduced me and then took the call. So there you go. Silence is golden, right?
Well, no, when I turned it on, I heard like a splashing noise in the background, but and I thought that was part of your grading and report intro, but who knows? Maybe we had a ghost on the line.
Maybe we did indeed. Yeah, I tend to have splashing noises happen quite a bit down here in the cave that I broadcast from. Yes.
That's the one that's 500 miles below ground, right?
Yes, it is. Well, possibly hundreds or more. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is our shtick that we do at least every week on the program. So how are you, Royce?
Oh, I'm doing just great. And I was just telling the guests that they ought to go over there and give your show a listen. In fact, I put a plug in for you every week.
Oh,
no, not every week, but every show. I mean, I do have 2 shows a week, but I do mention your show and, try to send a few people your way. I hope it works because, I mean, I like my listeners to be able to enjoy as many good shows as they can.
Well, certainly we like good shows, and yours is one of them, and I thank you for sending your listeners over to my show. If they like my show and your show, they must be good listeners as well.
There you go. I would agree with that. So, Micah, we got more than one conference that you have coming up in the near future. One of them was with Anthony Sanchez in California.
That's correct. Yes, I'm going to be out there. Let's see here. That's going to be in mid-June that I'm going to be out there in California, in Southern California, Sacramento to be specific. And I'll be out there with Anthony and the guys. It's definitely going to be a good time. And, gosh, there's a whole bunch of people that are going to be on board for that one. As far as I know, I think we've got David Weatherly. Scotty Roberts is going to be there just as well. Of course, Scotty's putting on the Paradigm Symposium with me and a few others. Lyle Blackburn, I think, also, who is kind of the latest expert right now on what was known as the Falk Monster. He's got a new book about the legend of Boggy Creek. He'll be there talking as well, so it should certainly be a great time. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm kind of looking forward to it myself. I won't be traveling to California. I'm disabled, but Anthony has asked me to see if I could attend via Skype and me and Jerry Pippin and question some of the speakers, in other words.
Oh, great.
So unless he changes his mind or I change my mind or something unforeseen comes up, I'll probably be attending via Skype.
Good.
But, yeah, and I'm going to be talking to some of these people in the near future, like Lyle Blackburn. And now the thing about his book is something new to me, the monster that you named. I've seen it on his website, but I'm drawing a blank on it right now. The name you just called out, it's sort of like what, Bigfoot or Mothman?
Well, the Falk Monster is the name that's given to this creature. And, of course, there was a famous film made back in the 1970s called The Legend of Boggy Creek that talked about this. And the Falk Monster was, in essence, a Bigfoot-type creature. But I guess the only primary difference between a quote-unquote Falk Monster and then a conventional report of a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch would have to do with the relative size. In the Pacific Northwest, the Bigfoot that is, I think, most commonly associated with that term, the creature rather most commonly associated with the name Bigfoot, is a very large, certainly very anthropomorphic animal. While the Falk Monster was as well, it was a little smaller than the reports of the creatures from the Pacific Northwest, and the Falk Monster was also believed to be a little more like an ape, a little more ape-like, a little more primitive, if you will. And so there were definitely reports that had, taken place all throughout, that little area, that little town known as Falk, Arkansas, but also Texarkana and, parts of North Texas and the like. So that entire region really is pretty well known for having its bout with different kinds of human-esque, hairy monsters. Scary creatures. Oh, indeed, yeah. They certainly are. And there's quite a bit of history about that Falk Monster creature. But, it's great that Lyle Blackburn's got this new book out that deals with that. And I think, as a matter of fact, I think I've got it right here behind me, The Beast of Boggy Creek. We had Lyle on the Gralien Report and talked about that. So I know he's going to be out there in Southern California at Anthony Sanchez's conference. I hear George Norrie will be Skyping in at one point and joining us for a little while. So there's going to be a whole entire roster of colorful characters. And, of course, yes, I'll be...
Yogi and the whole gang's going to be there.
That's right.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And real quick, Mike, I want to apologize to you and to all the listeners for that background noise just a minute ago. But while I was listening to you, I went over to the symposium site, which I have linked on my front page on that banner I just told everybody about, to, copy and paste the link and put it in the chat room. And I didn't know Anthony had a, sound file that loaded automatically on the site, and it kind of cut in there.
That's okay. Live radio. You've got to love the perils of live radio.
Yeah, it reminds me that I need to be more careful and not click on a web page to get a link to put it in the chat room. Just right-click and click properties and pull it off of that.
Yeah. Whatever works.
They say you live and learn, don't they?
Something like that.
Now, what are you going to be doing over there at this symposium? Well, you got a particular topic you want to cover? I know you got that Magic, Mysticism, and Molecule book, which was a fantastic read and very educational. So I didn't know if that's what you're going to be covering, or you got a little more material besides that.
Well, when I had first been contacted by Anthony, and this, of course, with regard to the event in Southern California next month, Anthony had asked for the premise of the speech I would be giving, and I told him that in all likelihood it would have to do with what my next book will deal with, the UFO singularity. And then I saw the roster on the website, and they had listed Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. So I'm pretty confident that I can actually blend the two. And in all likelihood, the speech that I will be giving specifically will have to do with the history of magical practices and then the use of the inner arts of mysticism to reach a contemplative state of learning and knowing and creativity, and then ultimately union with divine essences, if you will, which throughout different periods in our history have, of course, led to what we might call attempts at, I would say, if not actual direct contact, at very least attempts at contact with some sort of sentient intelligence or sapient intelligences from other realms. So that will be kind of where I'm going with this speech that I'll be giving at Anthony's conference. And then, of course, it'll probably get a little toward the end into the concept of, future technology and how the furtherance of our own technological abilities will bring us closer to, if indeed there are other intelligences in the universe, it'll bring us closer to realizing and perhaps even, communicating with or even merging to an extent with some of these in a way that is both productive and cooperative. And I guarantee that later this year at Paradigm Symposium in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that's the event Scotty Roberts and I are doing in October, I'll probably be shifting gears and focusing a lot more on that latter subject of how, again, what I call the UFO singularity plays into all this.
Yeah, and I know Scotty Roberts is the author, and he's been on my show. We've talked about his book, The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim, and I'm pretty sure you two might touch bases on that, since I'm pretty sure your UFO singularity and his Rise and Fall of the Nephilim are connected at some point in time down the line, aren't they?
They are, sort of. As a matter of fact, I've asked Scotty if he wouldn't consider actually penning a foreword for this book, because, Scotty and I, of course, we work very closely together. We speak about every day. He's a very close business associate, but he's also a very good friend. Working together on the Paradigm Symposium as closely as he and I do, I don't think that you could work that much and that often with someone and not at very least, strike up some sort of a friendship. Once you're put in close proximity with another good person, and Scotty is certainly one of the best people I know. He's a real gem of a guy, and it's funny because he lives in Minneapolis and I live down in western North Carolina, but we're in contact every day, and it's just a real pleasure and a joy to be working with him on the Paradigm Symposium, as well as Intrepid Magazine, which is one of his endeavors that he's been working on for several years now, and of course I'll be I'm now working with him, in a capacity in terms of editorial and revisionary kind of expertise with regard to that project. So it's a lot of fun working with Scotty, and these are all things that we hope to incorporate, and I certainly hope to incorporate him at some point into this strange concept of the UFO singularity as well, because it's not entirely different. I think he looks to the ancient past with his Rise and Fall of the Nephilim, but the point is that at some point, and this is kind of a heavy question for a lot of people, but if we do take, and I don't necessarily take literally the idea of ancient aliens visiting Earth, but nonetheless, if there is some truth to this concept, and Scotty looks at it from a slightly more spiritual perspective in his book, there comes a time where we have to ask sometimes rather difficult questions along the lines of, are we the byproduct of some ancient technology that, created, for lack of a better term, what we are? or which perhaps helped us to become the entities, the sentient, entities that we are today. And if that's the case, will this occur again at some point in our future? Yeah, hopefully I'm still here. But hopefully that, what we would learn from this is that if this indeed happened in the past, perhaps it could happen again in the future. And the next time around, who knows? Whereas if it were aliens in our ancient past, if we were to suppose anything so bold about our own existence and our own beginnings, could it be that in the future we will have that same sort of role, and that we will play that role in instigating some other kind of intelligence, whether that be artificial intelligence or whatever else? Maybe we humans are artificial intelligence to some degree.
Actually, in a way, we might be more than what we realize.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even understand consciousness ourselves, to be honest. But I also was wanting to get around to asking you about this UFO singularity. The title, it intrigues me. Could it be that your theme for the book deals with UFOs entering and leaving out of singularities, or being a part of a singularity, or creating a singularity?
It's sort of all those things in a sense. Singularity in the context of what the title entails, and of course I can only speak so much about this because obviously the book won't be coming out until this December, and then of course the real interviews will be going on. But I can talk about the concept a little here. I think when it comes to singularity within this context of the UFO singularity, I do have a double meaning. And it directly relates to the idea of technological singularity, which Ray Kurzweil and a lot of the transhumanists talk about. And being a journalist, I try not to commit myself to faith or belief on these kinds of concepts when I talk about them. And therefore, when I talk about something like technological singularity, which is in essence the idea that at some point in our not too distant future, our technological abilities will begin to grow and exceed the present potentials that are available to humans to such a great degree and at such an alarming rate that we will see the advent of such things as artificial intelligence, but we will also probably begin to see, well, a variety of things that will literally change the very essence of who and what humans are and how we interact with our reality. And so this is, to borrow the expression that we used for an event horizon, a singularity. It's a point in our future beyond which we can't really conceptualize what life as we know it will be like. And therefore, I think that's why I think Werner Vinge, the science fiction author, first used that expression, singularity, to refer to this point in our imminent future. And I think that with regard to our eventual understanding of UFO phenomenon, humankind has something of a point in the future which we might be able to conceptualize, where we will, whether you call it disclosure or whether you call it reaching a point of technological advancement ourselves that brings us to a level of kind of parity, I guess, with this kind of phenomenon, or rather maybe brings us to a point where we can better understand it. I think that singularity applies there in the sense that we don't know really what to expect of that. We could see what might happen if all of a sudden the masses were made, very well aware of what the UFO enigma actually is and what is underlying that. But beyond that, what lies beyond that? Once we know what's going on, what if we make contact, and what if we begin to discourse and some sort of a cooperative effort with this intelligence? What exists beyond that? So, outside the scope of just the actual physical, technological singularity event that the transhumanists talk about, there is a singularity in the sense of an event horizon beyond which we cannot perceive what UFO phenomena may be for us in the future. That's both fascinating and it's also a bit startling, and that, my friends, is what I call the UFO singularity.
Okay, it sounds very fascinating as well. And does this have any kind of connections whatsoever, which I don't see any, but I just thought I would throw it out there just in case I'm missing something,
Sure.
With your last book, Magic, Molecule, and Mysticism?
Well, it does play into that a bit. In the sense that with the last book, what I looked at was kind of a progression throughout time. Whereas we start, I think that the whole concept of magic in that book is the idea essentially that ancient humans would utilize mystical practices or some sort of ritual or something like that. Essentially what we could only call magic, and we would use this for the express purpose of influencing nature around us. You see, ancient people, and I was talking with a friend of mine about this morning. Ancient people in ancient times, it's very interesting that they often would make sacrifices to their gods. Their gods were perceived as being angry. And there were far more hardships in life for those people in ancient or prehistoric times. As we've progressed as a civilization, in modern times, it's interesting because, early Christian traditions, well, I should say maybe Judeo-Christian traditions, and actually those that preceded the figure known as Christ, they also incorporated, everything from sacrifices to, the wrath of God and these sorts of things. Whereas today, in this much more comfortable society in which we exist, we see that God is a more loving God. Perhaps there is a correlation between our concept of God and how He relates to us, as well as our progression and the hardships we have faced as a civilization and as a species throughout time. The point being that in ancient times, when people felt the need that they had to appease an angry God so that the laws of nature would exist in accordance with their circumstances that would benefit them, I think these people would engage in rituals or magic, if you will, in an effort to try and influence nature. And if they survived, in essence, then they felt, well, then, hey, this magic must be working. And then we look at mysticism. As people progress through time, people begin to ask a few more questions about the nature of their existence. They begin to ask questions about themselves, and they begin to look within as opposed to looking outward to nature. And when we look within to try and find our answers, this kind of leads to a few things: abstract thinking, of course, and then creativity sparks from this. Creativity is the impetus behind the literal ability to manipulate matter and space around us, which we can, of course, make the equivalent distinction there between technology, of course. And then when we have technology at our disposal and we better ourselves and our lifestyle through technology, of course, then we progress as a species, which finally leads us to the notion of there being other intelligences out there. Magic and mystical practices have been used throughout ancient times and even up until the present for purposes of trying to reach sentient intelligences that may exist on other levels of reality. Often in my book, Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule, I'll point out that this has been done through use of hallucinogenic molecules, something that I've never practiced myself. I tried to maintain journalistic integrity writing the book, and people would often ask, I guess, are you a user of hallucinogens? Certainly not, but I talk about them in the book because they have been a medium by which people have felt that they could reach this higher intelligence, and all essentially with the intention of trying to learn more about ourselves and progressing more as a species. So when we look to the future and these concepts of what I call the UFO singularity, again, we're looking just at the furtherance of our own technological prowess and our eventual evolution, if you want to use that.
You lost them for a minute again.
Moving forward and trying to find ways. Uh-oh, am I back?
Yeah, well, you came back and then you left and came back again. You keep cutting out for some reason.
Oh, I wonder what's going on. Maybe they're spying on me. They must be trying to keep me down. The shadow government, huh?
Maybe.
They don't want Micah Hanks to be able to be on Royce's program talking about these concepts. But in essence, hopefully the listeners were able to hear the gist of that, and that essentially it all really has to do with the furtherance of our technology and the progression of our species. So that in a nutshell, I think, is how it all comes together, and our progression through time and utilizing what we can to influence nature around us to better our own lives.
Well, this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but since you did bring up the hallucinogenics in your book, you talk about the mushrooms. I just had to ask you, you brought it to my mind. I sent a guy over to you named Earl Lee, the author of From the Bodies of the Gods.
That's right.
And did you hear from him?
I certainly did. He actually joined me for a little while on the program tonight. And, of course, as usual, I think that I was suffering some sort of a bandwidth issue that evening, so we weren't able to hear Earl as well as I would like to have been able to hear him, but he was a fascinating guest nonetheless. Okay.
Well, I was just wondering because I hadn't heard back from him on that yet, and I'm bringing him back on my show again as well. I thought his book was, well, it was unique to say the very least, but he made a lot of interesting points and possibilities in there.
He certainly did, and of course he tied it all in with this concept of cults of the dead, which was a rather creepy approach to all this, but interesting indeed.
Yeah, well, I've heard about these cults of the dead, but it's one of the few subjects that I haven't really had a big relish to delve into and learn a whole lot about. Maybe that human nature part of me is like icky.
Funny you use that word today.
Oh, why is that?
Oh, synchronicity, that's all. Carry on.
Okay. All right. Well, I've had a few guests on about synchronicity recently, too, so maybe it was meant to happen. But, yeah, was you going to, let's see, I was going to ask you a minute ago about the guest that's going to be coming to the Paradigm Symposium that you two are going to be having in October. Who are some of the speakers? I see that you got George Noory popping up. I see Eric Von Daniken. I see Bill Burns, Giorgio Tsoukalos, Philip Coppens. Let's see, we got Ian Punnett. Now, I don't think I've heard of Ian Punnett. Maybe you can brief me on him a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's Ian Punnett, and Ian is actually, he's formerly the weekend host of Coast to Coast AM. Ian now is more of a, I think he kind of fills in because, unfortunately, as Ian put it to Coast listeners, he suffers from tinnitus, where he has a ringing in his ears from doing talk radio for years and years. His wife and he actually have a radio program, as I understand, that they do a morning show together throughout the week there in Minneapolis. And Ian, being in the neighborhood, so to speak, and being a good friend of my colleague Scotty Roberts, has agreed to moderate the panel, and he's going to be coming on out to the Paradigm Symposium and sitting in with us on that and participating in the festivities. So it's going to be really great because we're not only going to have George Noory, Tom Danheiser, George's producer, is going to be there as well, but we're also going to have Ian Punnett there. So really a large swath of the entire Coast to Coast family will be there. I haven't managed to reach Art Bell yet to get him his complimentary ticket, but if Art's out there listening, tell him to contact me, info@graleyandreport.com. I'll be certain to get Art involved as well.
Well, I'm sitting here looking at some of your guests, and the biggest majority of them I've talked to on my show. I haven't got around to Laird Scranton yet, although I am working on that. He's got some books out over at New Page, or was it New Page or Inner Tradition Bearing Company, that I plan to get around to talking to him about. It's just I've been so tied up I haven't been able to. But, I mean, you got people like Eric Von Daniken, a definite leader in the ancient alien question, his right-hand man, Giorgio Tsoukalos, and, between the two of them, them and Philip Coppens, you're not going to find people, I don't think, that knows much more about that topic than them three.
Yeah, they really are some of the best equipped in terms of knowledge base that we have out there. Eric Von Daniken, of course, ever since the publication of Chariots of the Gods many decades ago, he's a fascinating character. He's a witty character. At times, I think, a satirist, and I think a lot of people miss that about Von Daniken, is that over the years he's had a lot of fun with his interpretation of these kinds of things, and a lot of people have criticized him for that, but I think at the end of the day we have to give him the full credit for really bringing to a popular audience the concept of and the potential for paleo contact in ancient times between humans and non-human intelligences. And then, of course, Giorgio Tsoukalos, who's very well known for both his appearances on Ancient Aliens, the program, as well as his hairdo.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you about that. You made me laugh because I've had Giorgio on my show, and one time I asked him about it and mentioned that it reminded me of looking like one of the Centauri on Babylon 5. Go ahead.
Well, Giorgio is such a nice guy, and he's so good-natured about things. And, of course, he's kind of branded his hair in terms of, his own marketing of his persona and whatnot. The hair has kind of become a branding point for him, as it should be, because, Giorgio, he's a vibrant character. Again, whether you agree with everything he says or you agree with nothing he says, I think that Giorgio is kind of one of these people. He's served as something of a protege to Von Daniken over the years, and he, of course, is one of the preeminent figures in this field with regard to ancient aliens. And I'll tell you, personally, I have philosophical differences from Giorgio and from Von Daniken, and even from Philip Coppens, who really I rank probably among the highest and the very best researchers out there. But Philip's been on my program, and I've differed with him, and we've, of course, if you're a good researcher, you will differ with people on points, but you will embrace the differences and that you will engage in a friendly debate with people about these sorts of things. I'd often talked about how Vimana is mentioned in the ancient Vedic texts and the holy texts and manuscripts of India. I'd always, known that Vimana can mean many things, whereas I noticed that in a lot of the books that Philip Coppens writes about, he talks about Vimanas almost exclusively as flying ships. And so I addressed that with him during an interview at one point. And, of course, Philip is well aware of this. It's just more often than not what we see on television or what we read in books is the premise that a certain ideology would expect for this author or this researcher to present. And seldom, especially in the medium of television, are these authors given an opportunity to talk about the other potentials. Typically, when you go on a television program, you have a point that you need to be able to drive home, and that's mainly, Royce, because it has to do more with entertainment than with knowledge. And while we have incredibly knowledgeable researchers out there like Philip Coppens, who is a truly, and I hope I word this carefully because I want to emphasize, my admiration and respect for him as a researcher. I don't think that some of these television programs do him justice because the breadth of his knowledge and his ability to discern, as you will see in his books and on his websites and in his articles, is not maybe as well expressed on these programs because they have to use little sound bites and segments that drive home a singular point, whereas Philip is multifaceted in his and he does know about all these things that I've, these counterpoints and things that I bring to the table. So
I can tell you from personal experience, when I used to watch Philip Coppens on TV, I noticed it's the same thing with all of them. They just give them 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, maybe not even 5 minutes, but I'm just, throwing a figure out there. And that they drive a singular point home and then they move on, to the next thing. There's no follow through, I guess you could call it. But I have read Twilight of the Gods from Eric von Daniken. I've read Philip Coppens' The Ancient Alien Question, and the one thing I notice is there's a heck of a lot more to them than what you'll ever see on the TV shows.
Precisely. And that's the point that needs to be made, is that a lot of these authors, again, von Daniken, even in his written works, has had a lot of fun kind of playing with these subjects. There was a very controversial point that he put out years and years ago about the potential extraterrestrial origin of bananas here on Earth. And he was asked by an interviewer who had been hired by Playboy magazine several years ago to address that and whether he was actually serious about that in his book. And von Daniken during the interview actually said, no, I wasn't entirely serious when I talked about that. And so people said, so were you purposefully trying to mislead people? And von Daniken kind of winked and said, the thing is that I'm not writing for a science journal. I am writing for a popular audience. And when I present something like that, every now and then, and I'm paraphrasing here, but every now and then the in the know, so to speak, reader will kind of get the wink that I'm tossing out there with certain passages. And so, in other words, von Daniken admits that while he takes this subject very seriously, there have been times where, either for comedic purposes or for other purposes, that he will kind of play with things a bit in terms of his research for purposes of illustrating the humor behind certain aspects. I think a lot of people miss that about von Daniken and his research, and I'm sure a lot would differ with me on that point. But again, I think that the fundamental principle here is with someone like von Daniken is that the concept that he is portraying in totality and his ability to bring that to a popular audience of itself should be of merit. And I think that a lot of people kind of overlook that because of the sensational nature of what he's written over the years. But yes, you're very right. The little soundbite culture that we live in today with these television programs and the like, it's very difficult for these concepts to really reach home with people. And they see, again, 3 or 4 seconds sometimes at a time worth of noteworthy statements these individuals are making on television, and they have to base their entire knowledge and perception of that individual on that. And that's really not very fair.
That's true. And, one of the beauty of these symposiums is, pardon me, is it gives these guys a chance to actually come out in front of the audience and actually go through everything and follow through with it in a logical course that's easy to keep up with. And people can actually get books and tapes and, things of that nature, cassettes or whatever. And I know oftentimes y'all film it and y'all put it on YouTube later.
That's correct, yes. And, of course, we'll hope to do that with Paradigm Symposium as well, to be able to offer DVDs for people who want to be able to take home a little of the magic.
Right. And I also see you're going to have Bill Burns there, and I don't think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who's done more research or as thorough and in-depth a research as he has into the modern-day UFO phenomena. He's done more than that, but, I would say, in my opinion anyway, that he excels in that.
Bill Burns is really, again, he's the publisher of UFO Magazine, and so Bill is, of course, very in the know when it comes to the state of modern ufology. But Bill is also, of course, someone who is remarkably versatile. He's worked on, in production of films and things like that. He's been a screenwriter, and he's also co-authored books with George Norrie of Coast to Coast AM. He's written books about hauntings. He's written books about all different kinds of subjects. History is another thing that he's very interested in. And then finally, yes, of course, he's perhaps best known for his interest in UFOs. So Bill Burns is very multifaceted. And you'll find actually when you really look into a lot of the people that we're featuring at Paradigm Symposium this year, that all of them essentially are people who have very multifaceted backgrounds. As a matter of fact, maybe the best example of that is Marie D. Jones. Marie will be speaking at the symposium. She's got a new book coming out. I believe it's called This Book is from the Future.
That's the one.
Yeah, it deals with the future and deals with time travel and all these things. She's also written in the past, however, about everything from cryptozoology to ghosts to UFOs. I mean, she is someone who really has a much broader understanding, and really couldn't just be called a specialist in one field or another. She really is quite formidable in the sense that she knows a little bit of, actually, she knows a great deal about a lot of different things.
No doubt in my military mind. Marie's been on my show many times. A sweeter lady you'll never want to find. And if there's anybody, in my opinion, and he's going to be at your symposium as well, that's as well-rounded and as knowledgeable in as many subjects as her, I would have to give that hat over to Nick Redfern.
Of course, Brother Nick. Brother Nick is he's fantastic. I really shouldn't say anything else, because if I do, I'll end up spending the rest of the interview just talking about Nick and what he does. He is that good, isn't he?
Yeah, actually, he's very good, and I mean, he talks about almost everything. I've got several of his books. He's got a new one coming out, Pyramids in the Pentagon, and he's going to come over here and talk to me about this. I think it's in September, which is going to be closer to your Paradigm Symposium, so that'll give me a chance to plug you again during that show, in fact.
Fantastic. I always appreciate that, Royce.
But, yeah, and Marie, like you said, she covers all these other the one thing that I say Marie does that Nick doesn't do, at least I haven't seen him, is she covers the science and spirituality connection, I think, a little more than Nick does, in my opinion. But nonetheless, they both are very, wear many hats, you might call it.
Certainly, yeah. Marie is very much a thinker, and she certainly tries to draw the necessary parallels. I think they need to be drawn between these different kinds of subjects, and of course, I try to do that with my research, as does Nick Redfern. The neat thing about Nick, I think, though, that maybe differs from a lot of the writers is that, he is one of these, he's almost like a soldier. He gets out there in the field, he studies this stuff, and then he reports about it. And he's very journalistic in that sense. I've heard people call him the Gonzo or the paranormal Hunter Thompson, He's very much a person who gets out there, he lives it, he's traveled around, and then he writes about those experiences in the true journalistic sense. And he's very, very good at it, too.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. And I also see you got Paul Van Ward on there, and he's another one that's been on my show, and he's gotten many books out on the ancient alien, visitation. And, he's also talks a lot in his books about the fact that there's more to our consciousness than we realize, kind of like Marie Jones talks about as well. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but I'm sure you know what I'm referring to with him. Huh?
Oh, I just said, oh, yes. And, he was also a contributor to that anthology that actually Scotty and I, Philip Coppens, Von Daniken, and a lot of us actually contributed to it. It was The Lost Civilizations and Secrets of the Past that New Page put out. What was it? Paul Von Ward's article, I think, was the AB intervention hypothesis. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you put that, because I was trying to get to it a minute ago.
Oh,
I haven't read his book in several months, and well, you're like me. You read a bunch of books, and you know how your mind during the show can just go blank.
My mind's usually blank, as a matter of fact. I think that probably surprises a lot of people, but I think you can think to a point of literally non-thinking. So, if anything, I think I'm so contemplative at times that I'm literally in a sort of Zen-like state of non-thinking.
Well, I got to tell you, you're going to have a lot of stuff coming up between both of these conferences, but do you have any other things coming up besides that?
I've always got stuff coming up, brother.
I can believe that.
Yeah, I stay busy. There's my ongoing interest in an antebellum mansion here in western North Carolina where I live called the Reynolds Mansion. I'll be involved in some projects with that. I'm already thinking ahead as I'm kind of wrapping up my present book with New Page, which is, again, the UFO singularity we talked about a little earlier. And then, I'm already kind of thinking ahead to what the next project is going to be, because like a lot of people who do this for a living, and I'm fortunate enough to where between this and being a professional musician, I am able to make in fact, a better living than I used to make, when I worked full-time jobs like working in radio. I'd be quite prolific on the airwaves here in western North Carolina, and although I miss that to an extent, by the same token, I really, really enjoy being able to be a researcher of strange phenomena, as well as being a acoustic musician. It's funny that I don't talk about that aspect of my life all that much when I do interviews like this. People know me to be a full-time investigator and researcher, and when I say full-time, I mean that usually I'm at my desk by no later than 8:30 Eastern time in the morning, and often, if I've got a full day, especially when I've been writing this book, I'll be at my desk at midnight still working. I'll take a couple of hour-long breaks or something through the day, but I can really be quite a workaholic. But a lot of the time, especially in the summer months, I'm out there on the weekends performing, playing. People like to call it bluegrass in this part of the world, and it is that. But I think kind of prefer to call what I do alternative acoustic music, because while it's the majority of it may be bluegrass, I'd like to do a lot of jazz songs and even old classic rock and things like that, Tom Petty and things. Perform those on a Martin D28, which is the quintessential bluegrass guitar. And it's interesting to bring all this up because while that may seem like a strange dichotomy between doing research of UFOs and things like that and then playing bluegrass and acoustic music on the weekends, Jerome Clark, one of the best-known researchers of strange phenomena, he was an editor of Fate magazine for a number of years. And Jerry, also wrote a lot of songs that I believe, some really well-known country singers. I think Emmylou Harris may have been one that recorded some of his material. And Jerry Clark also is quite a prolific songwriter, and he's been an acoustic guitarist for years too. And so again, you see a lot of the time that these people who are best known for one thing, they have other facets of their interest and their expertise that you don't get to hear about quite so often. Nick Redfern also is very musical, and if you read books like I think Three Men Seeking Monsters was the book that came out a few years ago. Each chapter begins with a quote or a segment of lyrics from a Ramones song. And Nick's very interested in punk rock and, the history of not just British punk rock, but also American rock as well. And, Nick's quite musical just as well. A lot of these people are. Jim Morris, he'll stand around and he'll sing Uncle Pim with you all night. I've done that with Jim before, and it's kind of fun. So
I have to wonder if he has outdated email on his website, because I've sent him email through it and never heard back. Either that or his mailbox might be full because he gets so much email, in other words.
Jim gets a lot of email, and Jim stays notoriously busy. He, I do know Jim, but I very seldom am ever able to correspond with him, probably just because he and I are both so busy and we each forget to email each other back.
Well, I can understand how that works.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Jim Mars is another one who's he's devoted years into this research, and to be honest with you, to my knowledge, most of the people that we've discussed here tonight are all people who have devoted, I would say at a minimum 15, if not more, to, 30 years or more time investigating the fields of their favorite interest.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And for many of these people, Royce, it becomes a lifelong obsession. I'm sure it'll be mine, and, God willing, the people in my life that mean the most to me will always accept my passions for the unexplained, and hopefully deal with that and allow me to deal with it.
Well, you got to learn to live and let live, is the way my Uncle Raymond used to put that, which, I'll let you live and you bloody well better let me live. I just had to do that.
That's part of the code of the South, I think it is. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and of course, let me live and I'll let you live. So,
but yeah, and I, even myself, I've been studying the ancient alien phenomenon for some 25 odd years myself, and I found out that I'm still not at the end of it.
You'll never get to the end of it. And that's the key I had said recently, and interestingly, I've become almost as well known for my quotes apparently these days as I have for whatever I've written, which it's a struggle for me because I see that in my life I try to be a good person, and I think frankly that I succeed at being a good person because you come to a point in your life where you set a certain set of guidelines, whether those be morals, scruples, whatever, by which you choose to live. And I hold myself to very, strong standards, and it comes back to bite me nonetheless, because I think that, when you really try to be a good person, and you put that out there in every way that you can, people, especially in Western culture, I think, are naturally very skeptical of that. They're skeptical of it because, these days it's hard to find a person who you can really trust and who's really a good person. And
that's true.
And so I try to share aspects of my life with people in ways that are meaningful to me, with the hope that they will be also meaningful to others. And I will put quotes and things online via Twitter or Facebook, or I'll include them with articles, or I'll put them at my website, the Gralien Report. And one thing that I said recently, which again, I hope that when people read these sorts of statements that I put out there, they are intended by me as being both educational and insightful, with the intention of helping them come to realizations about themselves as they, when they come to me, help me learn things about where I'm going and what I'm trying to do. And I said that the enlightened soul will realize at some point in their lives that there is no such thing, essentially, as knowing. There's only learning. And when we're going through life, you will never fully know anything. You will never fully attain all knowledge. The process, and I think that the closest we can ever really come to enlightenment in this world, is to continue learning. And we can continue to learn, and we can grow as individuals, and hopefully with that knowledge we can better ourselves. But we will never attain all knowledge. I think that, again, the concept in Western society, when we look at the East and we look at spiritualism, nirvana, enlightenment, these kinds of concepts, people think that you reach a point where all of a sudden it's like, and there is bliss. All is well, all is perfect, and we know all things. That's not how it is. There will always be strife. We'll always have to cope with things like hunger. We'll always have to cope with things like, financial stresses. We'll have to cope with loved ones coming and going, life and death, heat and cold. All these things will continue to affect us, but we can always hope to grow and learn. And if nothing else, I hope that people will take back from their experiences as beings and living this life that we choose to do, and to see the world and to live the life that we have. And that in doing so, we are always learning. If you're not learning, then what good is it? And so you won't ever get to the end of that road, Royce, and I hope that that's not discouraging, because it's not meant to be. It's meant to be, if anything.
Actually, it's not, because it's really, for me, kind of like watching a movie.
Yeah.
If you get to see the end of the movie and they end it where you got the whole answer to the whole film, there's no need to have a sequel.
Yeah.
And then what do you have after that? Nothing's left. I mean, it really is. It's not about the mastering life. It's more about living life.
It is, indeed. And that, I think, is fundamentally what drives me to study the unusual things, the unexplained, because at some point in our history, all phenomena observed by humans was unexplained phenomena. And science, I would define presently as a process by which we seek to better our understanding of all phenomena that occurs around us. And how strange it is to me that in this modern era, we now have a circumstance where those things which fall outside known scientific phenomena are viewed with harsh skepticism. Because at one point in our history, we didn't know everything, but we certainly could observe things that we didn't understand. And what do? We sought to try and better ourselves by understanding those things. These days, it seems that, especially with a lot of the things that we deem supernatural or paranormal, the mainstream scientists will look at those things and say, probably not. They don't give it a second thought. They think of it no further, or they will lean heavily on what is often outdated previous scientific attempts at explaining or rationalizing these phenomena, which often led to the simple explanation that there's not enough data to support this. And as our science grows and as our technological prowess expands over time, and we're better equipped technologically to be able to try and understand these things, how is it that we don't revisit certain subjects and certain areas that maybe in the past we've kind of gone, maybe there's not a whole lot to this, or at very least we don't have the tools we need to understand it? And how is it that we can continue to discern that, well, UFOs, probably not. Ghosts, probably not. Bigfoot, probably not, when we're better equipped now than we ever have been in decades past to come to a full understanding of those things. And so I think that periodically we have to revisit certain unexplainable phenomena, even if we don't have proof of its existence, and if based on present scientific data, there doesn't seem to be proof of this. I think we need to revisit those things from time to time and see if we don't have technology now that would change that perspective.
And for my way of thinking, even if you don't have the technology, I found that just reading books or reading the Bible, each time you come back and reread it, new technology or not, you find stuff you missed the first time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And in that sense, you know, although we were discussing the finality of a film, you know, when if everything's put out there at the end of that film, there's no need for a sequel, and therefore you may not enjoy it as much because you won't be able to be a return viewer and enjoy an entire trilogy of films. But the thing is that some films, and this is maybe what's important, some knowledge, in other words, is what I'm trying to equate this to, is worth revisiting. Some knowledge that we have, whether that be the Bible, whether that be, you know, the Bhagavad Gita, whether that be the Quran, whether that be, you know, a copy of the Webster's Dictionary. You know, if you pick it up and you can read it and you every time come back and take something new away from that, there's a great replay value built into that. And some knowledge, this shows, is well worth revisiting.
Yeah, I would definitely tend to agree with that. And there's knowledge out there for anybody that wants to look. You mentioned earlier that you spend X number of hours a day. I think it was 12, doing a lot of research. I'm assuming you do a lot of this on the computer, don't you?
I do. There are a variety of ways you can extract knowledge. You know, I think one of the most beautiful tools that we have these days is Skype. And I have a lot of contacts around the world in different countries, fortunately, all of whom who speak well enough English that I can communicate with them because I'm not multilingual. I'm very limited in my prowess with Spanish and French, and then outside of that, I don't speak any other languages very well at all, except maybe Pig Latin. But I certainly I rely on the knowledge that I can gather from people who have experience with and who have been influenced by other cultures to help broaden my worldview. I correspond via email with a lot of people for the same reasons. I read a lot of books because I think that, you know, despite the fact that I love the Kindle, that when I was brought on board with Intrepid Magazine, Scotty Roberts, as a gift, sent me a Kindle Fire. And I love the instance, even though I disagree with the way that our culture is so rooted heavily these days in instant gratification, it is kind of cool to be able to get online and download a book and have it on your e-reader and start reading right away as soon as you find out about something. But by the same token, yes, I think that the majority of the knowledge, inherent to humankind that we have accumulated over time, the vast majority of it is available to us on the web. And so when I do a lot of researching, I do spend a lot of time online as well.
Okay. Now, I've heard recently from a guest that's been on your show that you recommended to me to be on my show, which I've set him up to be, and I just couldn't help but ask, had you thought about making Thomas Fusco one of the speakers over there? Because it sounded like his material was very interesting. I mean, I haven't had him on yet. I've scheduled him, but reading what he sent me about it, it sounded fascinating, so I just wondered if you thought about setting him up to go to the Paradigm Symposium.
You know, I would love to have Tom at the Paradigm Symposium. This year, we unfortunately at present are maxed out with our speakers, and we have been so graciously approached by a number of others over the last several months who have offered their prowess as a speaker. And this year, with it being 2012 and the end of the Mayan calendar and a lot of the ancient mysteries of the past kind of spilling over into the present, we chose to theme Paradigm Symposium around our ancient history and looking at our ancient past, whether that has to do with ancient alien contact or it has to do with just mysteries of our ancient past, the pyramids and, you know, these ancient structures, lost cities, things like that. And that's why you'll see that a lot of our guests are talking about these things, with perhaps the exception of myself, because in the midst of all this and all this discussion about our ancient past, I do want to try and use that as a springboard by which I will, at the Paradigm Symposium, be talking about technology of the future. I think that those two are entirely relevant, and hopefully the listeners see the parallel there. You know, if we want to understand our present, we seek, you know, to understand the past, but let us not forget the potentials that await us in the future. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. And I assume that next year, if all goes well this year, you know, we do hope to be able to make Paradigm Symposium an annual event that people can attend and enjoy. And if that's the case, next year we will probably theme things around a different concept. We may hold the event in a different city as well, and that way we'll be able to bring it to a totally different demographic. We may feature more guests who speak about cryptozoology, or feature more guests that speak about physics and science and spirituality. In which case, I think Tom, a dear friend and a fantastic mind, indeed, Tom Fusco would be perfect for that kind of a thing. And so what I would hope to do, since we're already maxed out this year, is keep in mind people I might like to have next time around who could come and speak at the next Paradigm Symposium. And who knows what direction we'll take that one.
Okay. Now, we've only got 6 minutes remaining, but real quick, like Cindy in the chat room threw a question in. How much hands-on research do you do, and have you visited any sites that show carvings of ancient astronauts as an example?
I certainly should have mentioned that, yes, I do love to get out and travel as much as I possibly can. Anytime I'm, gifted with a ticket to fly out to the other end of the United States, for instance, like what I'm going to do next month with Anthony Sanchez's conference in Sacramento, I try and utilize my time spent traveling, and also I spend a lot of time traveling, playing music as well, to reach out and to go to locations when I can. And for instance, there's and this is actually right here in Western North Carolina, but with specific reference to mysterious symbols and markings on rocks and things like that. There's a location known as Judaculla Rock, which again is a large stone, may date back as far as, for all we know, Paleo-Indian times. And someone asked me recently on an interview what Paleo-Indian means. That refers specifically to a period during which bands of hunters probably crossed the Bering Strait and entered North America beginning around 17,000 years ago. There's also, interestingly enough, evidence for what I would call nuclear events that occurred during that time period. But whatever the case may be, yes, I always try to go out and do hands-on research and visit these kinds of locations and learn what I can.
Okay. During the last 4 minutes, is there anything you'd like to throw out there that I haven't covered, or any last-minute thoughts or anything?
I always like to try and tell people not to take anything that they hear at face value. A lot of my listeners agree with my theories and my perspectives and things. Have you got me?
I got you back.
You lost me there. Okay, yeah. Intermittent signal phenomena again. We're going to have to brand a whole new kind of phenomena here, Royce. But I always ask people to, listen to me, but don't take it as a gospel truth. Challenge me, question me, and more importantly, question yourself, because only through asking questions and by challenging ourselves do we better ourselves as individuals. When a person confronts me with something and they have a problem with me, I accept graciously the challenge to set this situation right, in which case, I don't look at it as, why are you asking me about this, or why do you disbelieve me about this? No, it's, if there was ever a question about something that I presented, material or an idea or otherwise, if I didn't present it clearly and concisely enough to convince you, and therefore you have questions, it helps me better my argument if I put it back to you under better terms. And if you're still not convinced, then maybe I've bettered your own understanding in that I've caused you to question, and you're going to go looking for answers that are better suited to your worldview. And that's what I hope people will do, is that they will think for themselves and that they will learn from those experiences. And
in the end, isn't that what it really boils down to, is, hey, people, let's think, let's research, let's learn, and, add a little spice to life in the process?
I think so. And I certainly have a lot of spice in my life as a result of the conflicts and the confabulations and all the other things that probably begin with the letter C that my life, or other letters for that matter. But, I'm thankful, though, for those things, because if we lived a simple, easy, and perfect life, it wouldn't be very interesting, would it?
That's true. It'd be very dull and boring.
And I'm very fortunate not to lead a dull or boring life.
I would have to agree. Me too. But then, too, I think I do things to spice it up, because I get really bored. And when I get really bored, I get very mischievous.
Well, I think you're going to be getting bored and mischievous after this interview, because apparently you're going to be putting a lot of spice on this barbecue that you told me you're going to be cooking up, right?
Right. But it won't be ready to eat till Monday, so.
Well, that's okay. I wish I could be there. Sounds good. If you could mail me some, that'd be fantastic.
All right. Well, listen, Micah, I'm going to go ahead and cut you loose so you can go about what you got going on. And I've got a few more minutes. I want to tell everybody about your show again, and about some of the other hosts that I, got links to on my site that I recommend, and some of the social networks that I would recommend for them, and stuff that, probably doesn't have any interest for you at this point anyway. No offense meant. But you know what I'm saying. The kind of closing comments that people like to make. I want to thank you for coming on my show, and I definitely would like to have you come back and talk to us about the UFO Singularity when it comes out.
I'm always happy to join you again, Royce. Thank you so much for spending time with me this afternoon, brother. I always love talking to you, and y'all stay well, be well, all the listeners out there, and we'll be in touch, okay? And people, of course, can reach me, info@graleyandreport.com. Same URL, of course, graleyandreport.com is my website if they'd like to talk to me.
All righty, and I want to thank you for coming, and it's been a pleasure having you as usual. And you have a great Memorial Day.
You too, brother.
Okay, bye-bye. All righty then, everybody. Don't forget, this Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to have Stanton Freeman on, and he's going to talk about life in outer space and other related topics. In fact, we got a list of things going on with him, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a 1-hour show, but I'm not definite about that. But I did get an email from him confirming the show the other day, and during this email I had asked him, what he wanted to talk about, and he says we could talk about travel to the stars, about the cosmic Watergate, about the fact that 2 of his books have been optioned for movies, which that's fascinating, and we can be speaking about the Roswell Festival going to be coming up in July, the annual Paradigm Symposium in early August, and man's place in the universe, now that we know we are that there are planets all over the place, and what's wrong with SETI, the silly effort to investigate, or anything else related to flying saucers, were his exact words to me. So it should be an interesting show. Don't forget to click on the Friends link and come over here and check out some of the forums and the social networks that I, frequent and that I try to help out, the alien UFO community, the Supernatural UFO Forum, and United Paranormal International. Don't forget, here in July, we got World UFO Day coming up, and I got a link to them in the upper right-hand corner of the page if you want to go over there and learn more about that. And then don't forget to click on the Radio Favorites link. And you can go visit my friend at UKPN Radio, Gary Brown. You can visit Jim Harold and Micah Hanks at the Gralien Report, who we just heard. And then Ohio Exopolitics and Mark Hamill. And I would recommend any of these hosts if y'all need more shows to, attend to if you want to learn more. And with that, I'm going to call it quits and go start my barbecue. And thank you guys for coming. I couldn't have a show with you any more than I could without my guests, so I really do appreciate my listeners. And y'all have a great Memorial Day weekend. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and I'm going to be interviewing Micah Hanks, the host of the Gralien Report, which, if y'all have never been to his show, I really recommend that you do attend it. I think you'll really enjoy it. And he's also the author of his very own book, Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. And this is going to be about his second or third time on my show. He's a very interesting guest, and that's partly why I'm sure he's a very interesting host also. I don't often get to catch many shows, but I try to catch what I can, and I need to check into his. I have heard his archives before, and he did a really great job, I thought. So, like I said, I really would recommend him. But we're going to talk today about a couple of conferences that he's got coming, that Micah Hanks is a part of, that he's going to be talking about, that's going to be coming up in October. And I need to actually go to his webpage and look at that. And can you hold on just 1 minute? Okay. I hope that fixes it. Somebody has informed me that they can't hear. And that's odd because my everything is registering that it's working. And I wonder what happened to Sandy. I bet May Reed had probably come in just after the show started. But getting back to the business at hand, going to Micah's site, I'll come up with the, well, I know he had it on here. Oh, yeah, it was up at the top. In October, coming up, one of them in June in Sacramento, and that's going to be the 2012 UFO Paranormal Summit being put on by Strange Light Publishings, and it's going to be June 16th to the 17th in Sacramento, California. If y'all scroll down past Micah's and Stanton Friedman's, all the show descriptions for the upcoming shows, just below that, you'll see a big banner that has all the upcoming guests. Actually, the one with Stanton Friedman's not supposed to be there. Something's come up and he's not going to be able to attend. Stanton will still be at my show this coming Tuesday, nonetheless, but we're going to discuss something else other than the, upcoming UFO conference in Sacramento, because he's not going to be able to attend that one after all. But if y'all scroll down there and click on it, it'll take you right to the site where you can get ticket information and all the other information you'd like to know. You'll get to see the other speakers. And some of these speakers have agreed to come on my show and tell us what they're going to be doing at the show. And there's also another symposium. Hello, Micah. Hello, Micah.
Hey, Royce, how are you?
I'm doing just great. That was quite a little intro you had there.
Oh, well, unfortunately, I didn't hear you at first, so you may have introduced me and then took the call, so there you go. Silence is golden, right?
Well, no, when I turned it on, I heard like a splashing noise in the background, but and I thought that was part of your grading and report intro, but who knows? Maybe we had a ghost on the line.
Maybe we did indeed. Yeah, I tend to have splashing noises happen quite a bit down here in the cave that I broadcast from. Yes.
That's the one that's 500 miles below ground, right?
Yes, it is. Well, possibly hundreds or more. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is our shtick that we do at least every week on the program. So how are you, Royce?
Oh, I'm doing just great. And I was just telling the guests that they ought to go over there and give your show a listen. In fact, he's going to have the Paradigm Symposium, October 18th to the 21st. And we're going to talk a little bit about that symposium as well. And I'm going to give you the link to it so y'all can go see who all the speakers are and get an idea about ticket information and such. Let me paste that link, and I'll contact Micah real quick, and I'll bring him on. Just want to remind everybody, share this show's link with your friends. Tell them it's Tuesday nights at 8, Saturdays at 1. Tell them we have a chat room. If you like the show, which I'm sure you do, you keep coming, tell them you like it, and we'll get some people in this chat room with you to talk and discuss this while the show's live, as well as me putting out the notices. Let me go ahead and get Micah with us real quick, like.